Good evening, everyone. We are now in chapter 47 of the book of Jeremiah. This is the second book or second chapter with regards to the pronouncement of destruction and judgment upon the nations. The earlier chapter in chapter 25, we read of a series of nations that God will deal with. But from chapter 46 onwards, we see that yesterday God started to deal in prophecy with harsher terms with the nation of Egypt, and today with the area of Gaza, with the Philistines. Now, what is important that we need to understand is that in the coming number of chapters, there are 11 nations that God has specifically spent time on to deal more harshly with them, as I mentioned yesterday, because of what they had done directly or indirectly against Judah, to bring them into despair and not be able to protect them as agreed, like Egypt. And we will see how the progress with all the nations are that God is going to deal with them in a more harsher way. Now, in chapter 47, it's a very short chapter, but basically it tells us this: the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines before Pharaoh attacked Gaza. Remember, these are issues and these are specific issues that God has with the nations. You can see it in Jeremiah 25. Now, what's important now is this is with regards to the Philistines. Now, the Philistines are not the original people in the land of Canaan. And so we will learn a little bit about the Philistines in this chapter, but that we understand that they are not native to that place. They came from other places. Now, it is a time, and so the timing was told before Pharaoh attacked Gaza. Now, what really did happen is, if we have the map here, let me see, I can draw the map here. And we have the Sinai Peninsula. We have the Nile. And then we have Israel. We have the Jordan. And then we have the Dead Sea. When you understand this, you will find that Gaza is just over here. It's a small piece of land called Gaza. And it's in the land of Israel. So let's understand that what actually did happen, that we are told, is that Pharaoh had gone up to defend Judah. At the same time, Babylon had come down to attack Judah. Now, what really did happen? Maybe I should just redraw this. Then we can see the Dead Sea here. And Jerusalem will be right in the center. So when Babylon came after Zedekiah, Zedekiah had a treaty with Egypt. And so they called upon Egypt to come to defend Judah. So as Egypt went up towards Jerusalem, Babylon then decided to go away because they were not prepared to fight the Egyptians at this point in time. And so Nebuchadnezzar decided to withdraw. And when the Egyptians saw that Nebuchadnezzar had withdrawn, the Pharaoh decided not to venture into Judah and decided to go back to Egypt. Now, on the way back to Egypt, Pharaoh decided to attack Gaza. And that is the background we have today. Remember, Gaza is actually mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 2 and in verse 23. They had this land, and originally there was a native of the land called Avim, and the Philistines came to conquer Avim, and the people there, the natives, were decimated, and the Philistines took over their land. And so Gaza, or this piece of land, essentially is known as Avim. So let me just paint this picture here. This land is known as Avim. And then the Philistines came to take over this land. So Gaza and a number of areas around, like Ashkelon, Ekron, they are all part and parcel of the Philistines. And Philistines conquered the place very early on in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 23. It was discussed there. But that was in passing, and it helps us understand that Gaza has to do with the Philistines. This is the same Gaza that is at war right now. And so before Pharaoh, on the way back to Egypt, attacked Gaza, God had made this prophecy. Thus, so said Jehovah, behold, waters rise out of the north and shall be an overflowing flood. We've read this yesterday, and it actually does refer very much to Babylon, and they will come as a flood again, right? Again. They shall overflow the land and all that is in it, the city of Gaza, those who dwell within. Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall wail. This is a prophecy that ultimately, the prophecy is mentioned that Babylon will come and destroy Gaza. Now we need to remember that all these lands, Egypt, Gaza, Moab, Ammon, Edom, Judah, Sidon, Tyre, Syria, all of these places have been conquered over and over and over again. And so this particular prophecy is with regard to a particular time where they were on their own, and it would be Babylon from the north that will come like an overflowing flood. The picture that we're given in a very poetic way is that it's like a tsunami that's going to come and overflow the land and take over the place. At the noise of stamping hoofs of his strong horses, and remember, yesterday I mentioned to you, the horse is an animal of battle. A donkey is an animal of burden. So camels, donkeys, oxen, they are all used for domestication and to assist the humankind in their everyday life, in agriculture, in their travel, in carrying women and children and goods. But when it comes to horses, in the ancient days, horses are used for horsemen, for chariots, and it's always an animal of battle. And so in the book of Deuteronomy, God warns any future king of Israel not to amass forces and go to Egypt because they'll be preoccupied with war. At the rushing of his chariots, that's Babylon, at the rumbling of his wheels, that's the chariots, the fathers will not look back for their children lacking courage. Now, all of these is not just courage, this would be feebleness. Feebleness, meaning they are unable to protect even their children. When the Babylonians come, now you need to remember that Babylon is not a friendly nation. They're absolutely cruel. Now, obviously, the Philistines are also cruel, but the Babylonians are far more cruel than the Philistines. Now, that is for us to understand the implication, the greater of the nation here would be the Babylonians. This would be the Babylonian era. Verse 4. The reason why they lack courage is this. In verse 4, it tells us because of the day that comes to plunder all Philistines. This word to plunder really means to come and take spoil. To take spoil. When a nation comes to take spoil, they would be victorious. They will come to decimate the place. And so it's a day where the Philistines do not want to remember. The day where the Babylonians will come to conquer the Philistines, to destroy the Philistines. The first thing they did was to cut off from Tyre and Sidon. We need to remember Tyre and Sidon are places up here. Right? We have Tyre, and then we have Sidon above it. So please remember that these were their perennial friends. The Philistines, Tyre, and Sidon has a pact to help each other. And so we are told that Tyre and Sidon are actually cut off from the Philistines. For the Lord shall destroy the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Caphtor. Now, this idea is not the country of Caphtor. I think it'd be better to know this as the island of Caphtor. Now, it is likely, I think it is likely, this is how we should see it, that Caphtor may be further up here on the Mediterranean Sea, and they would have come over to dwell in Egypt as well as to dwell in Gaza. And so the Philistines came and conquered the Avim country, stayed there, and they called themselves the Philistines, friends with Tyre and Sidon. And so the way they fight would be different, the way they think would be different from the Canaanites. But eventually they became like a native of the Canaanites. Verse 5. With this, we have this imagery. Boldness has come upon Gaza. Ashkelon is cut off. With the remnant of the valley, how long will you cut yourself or keep fighting? Now, think with me that this expression here, boldness, is actually a very Eastern Oriental thinking. It's to shave hair off the head. So in, I guess, Eastern Oriental expression, you have expressions like shave your eyebrows, and the similar kind of expression. So baldness is shaving your hair. And that expression gives us the understanding that Gaza is humiliated. And this humiliation is by sheer destruction. And the destruction is by Babylon. And so we are told that boldness has come upon Gaza. Ashkelon is cut off. So Ashkelon, Ekron, Gaza, they are one of the 5 major cities of the Philistines. And you read this in the book of 1 Samuel. So we continue with verse 6. It says this, "O you sword of the Lord, how long until you are quiet?" This idea in verse 6 is basically talking about how God is using the Babylonians by the sword of the Babylonians to come and conquer. So how long will you still keep fighting until you stop fighting? Now that would be the question. Put yourself up into your scabbard, rest and be still. The idea here is Jeremiah is having a poetic expression here. It says, they will come, they will plunder the Philistines, they will cut off Tyre and Sidon, and the remnant of the island of Kaftor will be gone. Boldness will come upon Gaza, Ashkelon is cut off, and all this is saying, well, how long will it continue? When will Babylon stop doing this? When will Babylon put the sword back into its sheath? And then we are told in verse 7, how can it be quiet? How can it be at ease? How can it be at peace? How can it be undisturbed? Seeing the Lord has given it a charge against Ashkelon and against the seashore Gaza, there he has appointed it. So this picture that we are given right here is that Babylon will fight until the end of Gaza, until the end of the Philistines. And we actually do not read about the Philistines after the Babylonians came to destroy the place. So remember, we're talking about the context before Egypt attacks Gaza. And so that's one time that we are looking at chapter 47. After this, the prophecy says Babylon will come like the flood to overflow it, to cut and shave Gaza bald, to humiliate Gaza with sheer destruction. And that will be the second time. And from here on, we find that there will be no more discussion about Philistines any longer. And perhaps this particular destruction and judgment of God upon the Philistines, given the opportunity to Babylon to destroy them, would be quite complete. And so today we have a short chapter, and with this we come to the end of our session today. And tomorrow, next week, when we deal with chapter 48, we will deal with one of the longest chapter of prophetic words with regards to the destruction of a particular nation. And so with chapter 47, we have covered Egypt yesterday and Philistines today. So, with this, we come to the end of our session.